The Christmas Eve of 1,991 inches, my sister-in-law's dining room, is the night that divided my life into two parts, before and after. I was 31 years old, 7 months pregnant with twins, and I had just spilled red wine on the antique tablecloth that had been in my husband's family for 4 generations. But let me take you back to the beginning, because you need to understand how I ended up in that house, married to that man, surrounded by people who saw me as nothing more than an inconvenience. I met my husband Daniel at a bookstore in Denver, Colorado in the fall of 1985. I was 25, working as an elementary school teacher and living in a tiny studio apartment that I could barely afford. I had stopped by the bookstore after work to pick up a novel I had been wanting to read, and there he was in the philosophy section, looking like something out of a magazine. He was 33, a successful real estate developer, and he had the kind of confidence that made everyone around him feel like they were the most important person in the room. When he asked me for a coffee recommendation, I thought he was joking. Men like him didn't talk to women like me. I was plain, quiet, bookish. I wore secondhand dresses and sensible shoes. But Daniel looked at me like I was fascinating. He asked me about the book I was holding. He asked me about my job. He asked me questions and actually listened to the answers. That first conversation lasted 3
Today,
hours.
I want to tell you
We
about
closed
the
down
time
the
I traveled
bookstore
to
and then
Thailand
found a
and
diner that was
experienced
open
something
late.
truly
By
magical.
the time he drove me
I
home,
remember
I
standing
was
on the
already
beach.
falling. He kissed me on the cheek and asked if he could see me again. I said yes, before he even finished the question. Our courtship was like something out of a fairy tale. Daniel took me to restaurants I had only read about. He bought me jewelry I never would have dreamed of owning. He introduced me to his world of successful friends and elegant parties, and he made me feel like I belonged there. My colleagues at school were amazed. My few friends were thrilled for me. Everyone said I had hit the jackpot. What I didn't realize was that Daniel wasn't showing me who he really was. He was showing me who he wanted me to believe he was. And I was too blinded by the attention, too grateful to be chosen, to see the warning signs that were right in front of my face. We got married in June of 1986, a lavish ceremony at a country club that his family had belonged to for decades. His mother, Vivian, had planned every detail. She chose the flowers, the music, the menu, even the style of my wedding dress. When I suggested that maybe I could have some input, Daniel laughed and said his mother had exquisite taste and I should be grateful she was willing to help. So I smiled and nodded and wore the dress Vivian picked out, even though it was nothing like what I would have chosen for myself. After the honeymoon, Daniel and I moved into a house in the suburbs. It was beautiful, spacious, the kind of home I never imagined I would live in. But it was also just 10 minutes from Vivian's house, and she had a key. She let herself in whenever she wanted, sometimes before I was even awake. She rearranged my kitchen cabinets. She criticized my cooking. She told Daniel that I was wasting money on groceries that she could get cheaper at the store she preferred. The first time I saw Daniel's true nature was about 4 months after our wedding. I had been to visit my mother in Nebraska over a long weekend. She was getting older and her health was declining, and I tried to see her as often as I could. When I got home, Daniel was waiting for me in the living room with a look on his face I had never seen before. "Where have you been?" he asked, his voice cold and flat. I was confused. He knew where I had been. I had told him about the trip weeks in advance. "I was visiting my mother," I said. "You knew that." He stood up slowly and walked toward me. "You were gone for 3 days. 3 days without checking in. 3 days where I had no idea what you were doing or who you were with. I called you every night," I reminded him. "We talked for an hour each time. That's not good enough." He grabbed my arm, his fingers digging in so hard I gasped. "When you're married to me, you don't disappear for 3 days. Do you understand?" I was too shocked to respond. This wasn't the man who had wooed me with flowers and poetry. This was someone else entirely. Someone with ice in his eyes and cruelty in his grip. He let go of my arms suddenly, and I stumbled backward. Then he smiled, that charming smile I had fallen in love with, and said, "I'm sorry. I just missed you so much. Let's not fight. What should we do for dinner?" I told myself it was just a misunderstanding. I told myself he had been worried about me. I told myself that every marriage had its rough patches and we would work through ours. I was so desperate to believe in the fairy tale that I ignored the monster hiding inside it. Things deteriorated gradually after that. Daniel became more controlling, more critical, more demanding. He monitored my phone calls. He checked the mileage on my car. He questioned every purchase I made, even though we had plenty of money. He decided which friends I could see, which was none of them after a while. He decided when I could visit my mother, which became less and less frequent. Vivian encouraged all of it. She told Daniel that I was too independent, too headstrong, that I needed a firmer hand. She told me that I was lucky to have a husband who cared so much about my well-being. She told me that my mother was a bad influence and that I should focus on my new family instead of clinging to my old one. My mother passed away in the spring of 1988. Pneumonia took her after a long winter of declining health. I wasn't there when she died. Daniel had refused to let me go when I got the call that she had been hospitalized. He said I had just visited her 2 months ago and another trip would be excessive. By the time he finally agreed to let me go, it was too late. She was gone. I inherited her house and her modest savings. Daniel took control of all of it. He sold the house without asking me. He put the money in his accounts. He said it was for our future, for the family we would build together. When I cried about losing the home I had grown up in, he told me I was being sentimental and childish. I wanted children desperately. I thought maybe if we had a baby, things would change. Maybe Daniel would soften. Maybe I would have someone to love who would love me back unconditionally. But months turned into years, and I couldn't get pregnant. Vivian blamed me, of course. She said I was too stressed, too emotional, that I was probably doing something wrong. She suggested that maybe Daniel should find a wife who could actually give him children. The fertility treatments were brutal. Hormones that made me sick and emotional, procedures that were invasive and painful. And through all of it, Daniel showed no compassion whatsoever. He complained about the cost. He complained about my mood swings. He told me that the least I could do was try to be pleasant while he was spending all this money trying to fix my broken body. The first time Daniel hit me was after a failed treatment cycle in 1990. I had been crying in the bedroom, mourning another month of hope destroyed, when he came in and told me to stop making so much noise. I tried to explain how devastated I felt, how much I wanted this to work, how sorry I was that my body kept failing us. He slapped me across the face so hard that I fell off the bed. "Your crying is pathetic," he said, standing over me while I lay on the floor in shock. "If you put half as much energy into being a good wife as you do into feeling sorry for yourself, maybe we wouldn't have these problems." He walked out and turned on the television in the living room like nothing had happened. I should have left that night. I know that now. But where would I have gone? My mother was dead. I had no siblings, no close friends anymore, no money of my own. Everything was in Daniel's name. Everything was under Daniel's control. I felt trapped in a cage I hadn't even realized was being built around me. The violence became a regular part of our marriage after that. Daniel hit me when dinner was late. He hit me when the house wasn't clean enough. He hit me when I asked questions he didn't want to answer. He hit me when I cried and he hit me when I didn't cry. There was no way to predict what would set him off, so I lived in constant fear, constantly trying to anticipate his moods, constantly failing. Vivian knew what was happening. She had to know. She saw the bruises I tried to hide with makeup and long sleeves. She heard the way Daniel spoke to me, the contempt and cruelty in his voice. But she never said a word to stop it. If anything, she seemed to think I deserved it. "Daniel has high standards," she would say. "If you would just try harder to meet them, he wouldn't get so frustrated with you." Then, in early 1991, a miracle happened. After 5 years of trying, I finally got pregnant. And not just pregnant, but pregnant with twins. The doctor said it was remarkable, given everything we had been through. I was terrified and thrilled and hopeful all at once. Maybe this would finally change things. Maybe Daniel would see me differently now that I was carrying his children. For a few months, things did seem better. Daniel was pleased about the pregnancy. He told everyone about the twins, basking in the congratulations like he had accomplished something himself. He even seemed gentler with me, more patient. I started to believe that maybe the nightmare was finally ending. But as my pregnancy progressed and the reality of 2 babies set in, Daniel's mood shifted again. He complained about how much weight I was gaining. He complained about my swollen ankles and my constant fatigue. He complained that I wasn't keeping up with the housework, even though the doctor had told me to rest as much as possible because of the risks associated with a twin pregnancy. Vivian decided that we should host Christmas Eve dinner at our house that year. She said it would be our last chance to entertain before the babies came and ruined our social lives for the foreseeable future. I tried to explain that hosting a dinner party while 7 months pregnant with twins was not advisable, but Daniel overruled me. He said his mother had her heart set on it and I needed to stop being so selfish. So I spent the week before Christmas cooking and cleaning and decorating, all while my back ached and my feet swelled and the babies kicked so hard I could barely breathe. Vivian supervised everything, criticizing every choice I made, rearranging the decorations I had put up, sending me back to the store 3 times because I had bought the wrong brand of something or other. By Christmas Eve, I was exhausted beyond words. The guests started arriving at 6. Daniel's sister and her husband, his brother and his wife, a few cousins, and of course Vivian, who acted like she was the hostess and I was just the help. I served appetizers and refilled drinks and tried to smile through the pain in my lower back that had been getting worse all day. Dinner was served at 8. I had made a roast and all the traditional sides, following Vivian's recipes exactly because I knew any deviation would be criticized. The antique tablecloth was spread across the table, a delicate cream-colored linen with hand-embroidered edges that had been in the family since before the Civil War, according to Vivian. She had brought it over herself and supervised while I laid it out, warning me to be extremely careful. I was pouring wine for Daniel's brother when it happened. One of the babies kicked hard, right into my ribs. The sudden pain made me gasp, and my hand jerked, and the bottle slipped from my grasp. Red wine splashed across the tablecloth in a spreading crimson stain. The room went silent. Vivian let out a sound that was somewhere between a gasp and a scream. "No, no, no, no! Do you have any idea what you've done? That tablecloth is irreplaceable. It's been in our family for generations." "I'm so sorry," I said, my hands shaking as I tried to grab napkins to blot the stain. "The baby kicked and I'm so sorry. Let me try to." "Don't touch it!" Vivian shrieked, snatching the napkins away from me. "You've done enough damage, you clumsy, worthless woman. I knew Daniel should never have married you. I knew you would ruin everything." Daniel stood up slowly, and I felt the temperature in the room drop. I knew that look on his face. I had seen it too many times before. "Go to the kitchen," he said, his voice terrifyingly calm. "Now." I tried to stay. I tried to remind myself that we were in front of his family, that he wouldn't do anything with witnesses. But the look in his eyes told me that he didn't care anymore. Whatever restraint he had maintained in public was gone. I walked to the kitchen on shaking legs. I heard him make an excuse to the guests, something about me not feeling well, and then his footsteps behind me. The kitchen door swung closed, and we were alone. "Do you have any idea how embarrassed I am right now?" he said, advancing toward me. "Do you have any idea what you've done to my mother?" "It was an accident," I said, backing away until I hit the counter. "Daniel, please." The baby kicked. I couldn't help it. "I'm sorry." "You're always sorry." He grabbed my arm and yanked me toward him. "Sorry doesn't fix the tablecloth. Sorry doesn't give my mother back her family heirloom. Sorry is just a word you use to avoid taking responsibility for being absolutely useless." "You're hurting me," I whispered. "Daniel, please. Think about the babies." Something flickered in his eyes, and for a moment I thought maybe I had reached him. Maybe the mention of the babies would remind him that I was carrying his children, that he couldn't treat me like this. But then Vivian pushed open the kitchen door. "That stain is never coming out," she announced, her voice dripping with contempt. 130 years of family history, ruined by some nobody who can't even hold a wine bottle properly. Daniel's grip on my arm tightened. "You hear that? 130 years. And you destroyed it in 1 second because you can't do anything right." "I've always said she wasn't good enough for you," Vivian continued, standing in the doorway with her arms crossed. "I told you from the beginning, but you didn't listen. And now look at what we're stuck with." I felt something inside me shift. It was like a door opening in my mind, a door I had kept locked for years because I was too afraid to look at what was on the other side. But I couldn't keep it closed anymore. I couldn't keep pretending that I deserved this, that I was the problem, that if I just tried harder, everything would be fine. I am not worthless. My voice came out stronger than I expected. I have spent 5 years trying to be the wife you wanted. I have cooked and cleaned and endured things no person should have to endure. And I will not stand here and be told I'm worthless because of an accident. The shock on their faces would have been comical if I hadn't been so terrified. In 5 years of marriage, I had never talked back. I had never defended myself.
Welcome back.
I had always apologized and submitted and hoped it would be enough to make the abuse stop.
My perspective.
How dare you speak to my mother that way, Daniel said, his face reddening with rage. Apologize, right now. No. That small word felt enormous coming out of my mouth. I won't apologize for being human. I won't apologize for an accident. And I won't apologize for finally telling the truth about how you both have treated me. Daniel let go of my arm. For just a second, I thought maybe it was over. Maybe he was going to walk away and cool down and we would deal with this later. Instead, he pulled back his fist and punched me in the stomach. The pain was unlike anything I had ever felt. I doubled over, unable to breathe, unable to scream, unable to do anything but collapse to the kitchen floor. I wrapped my arms around my belly, trying to protect the babies, but I could already feel something wrong, something wet spreading beneath me, something terribly, terribly wrong. "Daniel!" I heard Vivian gasp. "Daniel, she's bleeding." I looked down and saw the blood. So much blood, soaking through my dress, pooling on the white tile floor. The pain in my abdomen was getting worse, sharp waves that made me cry out. "Call an ambulance," I tried to say, but the words came out as a whisper. "Please." The babies. Daniel just stood there, frozen, staring at the blood like he couldn't understand what he was looking at. Vivian had her hand over her mouth, her face pale. Neither of them moved. Neither of them picked up a phone. It was Daniel's sister who saved us. She had heard the commotion and come to investigate, and when she saw me on the floor covered in blood, she screamed for her husband to call 911. She grabbed towels and pressed them between my legs, telling me to breathe, telling me the ambulance was coming, telling me to hold on. The paramedics arrived within minutes. They loaded me onto a stretcher while I clutched my belly and prayed. Daniel rode in the ambulance with me, suddenly the concerned husband, holding my hand and telling the EMTs that I had slipped and fallen on the wet kitchen floor. "She's been so unsteady lately because of the pregnancy," he said, his voice smooth and convincing. "I tried to catch her, but I wasn't fast enough. It happened so fast. I wanted to scream the truth. I wanted to tell them everything. But Daniel's hand was squeezing mine just a little too hard, his eyes warning me to stay quiet. And I was too focused on the pain, too terrified for my babies, to fight back in that moment. At the hospital, chaos surrounded me. Doctors and nurses rushing around, monitors beeping, people shouting medical terms I didn't understand. They told me I was having a placental abruption. They told me the babies were in distress. They told me they needed to do an emergency cesarean section right now if there was any chance of saving them. I remember being wheeled into the operating room. I remember the bright lights and the cold air and the pressure of the surgery. And then I remember waking up in a recovery room, groggy and confused, with no idea if my babies had survived. A nurse was beside my bed when I opened my eyes. She was probably in her 60s, with white hair and gentle hands and a name tag that read Barbara. When she saw I was awake, she smiled and said, "There she is. You gave us quite a scare." "My babies," I croaked. They're alive," Barbara said quickly. "They're in the NICU. They're fighters, both of them. A boy and a girl. They're going to need to stay in the hospital for a while, but the doctors are optimistic." I started crying then, tears of relief and exhaustion and emotions I couldn't even name. Barbara handed me tissues and let me cry without trying to stop me. After a few minutes, she said quietly, "Your husband is in the waiting room. I told him you needed to rest before visitors." She paused, watching my face. "Those bruises on your arm, the ones shaped like fingerprints. And that bruise on your abdomen, right where the bleeding started. I've been a nurse for 40 years. I know what those kinds of injuries mean." I couldn't look at her. I couldn't say anything. "You don't have to tell me what happened," Barbara continued, "but I want you to know that there are people here who can help you. There's a social worker on staff." A woman named Christine who specializes in situations like this. Would you be willing to talk to her? I thought about Daniel in the waiting room, waiting to come in and warn me to keep my mouth shut. I thought about Vivian, who would tell everyone that I had slipped and fallen, that I was clumsy and careless, that none of this was Daniel's fault. I thought about going back to that house and raising 2 children in an environment where violence was normal and love was conditional. Yes, I whispered. I'll talk to her. Barbara squeezed my hand. Good. Now, I'm going to go out there and tell your husband that you're not allowed visitors tonight, doctor's orders. And I'm going to make sure someone is with you at all times until Christine can see you in the morning. She stood up and looked down at me with fierce compassion in her eyes. Whatever happens next, I want you to remember something. You are not worthless. You are not clumsy. You are a mother who just fought to bring 2 children into this world, and that makes you one of the bravest people I've ever met. When Barbara left the room, I sobbed into my pillow. But for the first time in years, they weren't tears of despair. They were tears of something I had almost forgotten how to feel. Hope. I spent 2 weeks in that hospital while my babies grew stronger in the NICU. Christine, the social worker, visited me every day. She helped me understand my options. She connected me with a lawyer who specialized in domestic violence cases. She helped me document the abuse, the injuries, the patterns of control and cruelty that had defined my marriage. Daniel came to visit during visiting hours, of course. He brought flowers and apologized profusely. He said he hadn't meant to hurt me. He said the stress of the holidays had gotten to him. He said it would never happen again. He said he loved me and needed me and couldn't live without me. I had heard those words before. So many times before. But now I heard them for what they really were. Manipulation. Control. Lies designed to keep me trapped. I forgive you, Daniel, I said calmly, looking him straight in the eyes. I know you didn't mean it. He smiled, believing he had won again. He had no idea that I was playing a part, buying time, planning my escape. On the day I was discharged, I didn't go home. Instead, I went to a women's shelter on the other side of the city. Christine had arranged everything. My babies, finally stable enough to leave the NICU, came with me. We arrived at the shelter with nothing but the clothes we were wearing and a bag of baby supplies the hospital had donated. The shelter was small and crowded, and nothing like the beautiful house I had lived in for 5 years. But it was safe. For the first time since I married Daniel, I could breathe without fear. I filed for divorce the following week. I also filed a police report documenting years of abuse. Daniel's sister, the one who had called 911, agreed to testify about what she had witnessed that night. The medical records told their own story. The bruises, the internal injuries, the damage that could only have come from a deliberate blow rather than a fall. Daniel was furious. He denied everything. Vivian backed him up completely, calling me a liar and a gold digger and an ungrateful woman who was trying to destroy her son's reputation. They hired expensive lawyers. They tried to take the babies from me. They spread rumors about my mental instability and my incompetence as a mother. But the evidence was too strong. Too many injuries over too many years. Too many emergency room visits for accidents that didn't make sense. The judge saw through their lies, and I was granted full custody of my children, along with a restraining order against Daniel. My twins, whom I named Hope and Thomas, spent their first year in that shelter. We shared a room with another mother and her children. We ate communal meals and followed strict rules about curfews and visitors. It was hard, it was humbling, but it was also the beginning of a new life. I went back to teaching eventually, first as a substitute and then full-time. I found a small apartment that I could afford on my own salary. I made friends with other survivors, women who understood what I had been through because they had been through it themselves. I built a life, piece by piece, that belonged only to me and my children. Daniel fought for custody for years. He remarried twice, both marriages ending in divorce under circumstances that suggested I wasn't the only woman he had abused. He never admitted what he had done to me. He never apologized. He died of a stroke 15 years ago, alone in a nursing home, estranged from his children who wanted nothing to do with him. Vivian lived even longer, bitter and alone until the very end. She never acknowledged her role in the abuse. She never admitted that she had watched her son beat his pregnant wife and done nothing to stop it. She died without ever meeting her great-grandchildren because Hope and Thomas refused to let her be part of their lives. Hope became a pediatric nurse. She works in a hospital not far from where she was born, helping babies who are fighting for their lives just like she once did. She tells me that Barbara, the nurse who helped me that Christmas Eve, is the reason she went into nursing. She wanted to be the person who sees the truth when everyone else is looking away. Thomas became a family law attorney. He spends his career helping abuse survivors navigate the legal system, fighting for custody arrangements that protect children from violent parents. He tells me that watching me fight for him and his sister is what inspired him to dedicate his life to helping others do the same. I'm 66 years old now. I live in a little house with a garden full of flowers and a cat who thinks he owns the place. I have 4 grandchildren who call me Nana and think I'm the bravest woman in the world. I have friends who love me for who I am, not for who someone else wanted me to be. I have a peace that I never thought I would find when I was lying on that kitchen floor, watching my blood spread across the white tile. If you're watching this, and you're in a situation like I was, I need you to hear me. I know it feels impossible. I know you think you can't leave. I know you're scared and exhausted and broken down by years of being told you're not good enough. But you're not broken, you're just bent. And bent things can straighten with time and care and support. There are people who will help you. There are shelters that will take you in. There are hotlines you can call where someone will listen and believe you and help you make a plan. The National Domestic Violence Hotline is available 4 hours a day, 7 days a week. They've heard stories like yours before. They won't judge you. They'll help you. You deserve better than being someone's punching bag. You deserve better than being told you're worthless. You deserve better than living in fear in your own home. And you can have better. I promise you that. It won't be easy. Leaving is the hardest thing you'll ever do. But on the other side of that hard is a freedom you can't even imagine right now. I know because I walked that path. I know because I'm standing on the other side, surrounded by the life I built from the ashes of the one that was destroying me. My name is Susan Marie Callahan. I was a victim for 5 years, but I've been a survivor for 35 more, and every single day of freedom has been worth every single struggle it took to get here. If you take nothing else from my story, take this. You are not alone. You are not worthless. You are stronger than you know. And your story doesn't end in that kitchen, on that floor, in that house where you feel trapped. Your story ends wherever you decide it ends. And if you decide it ends with you walking out that door and never looking back, then that's exactly what will happen. You just have to reach for it. Trust me. Reach for it. I did, and it saved my life. If you're new to this channel, please consider subscribing. We share stories like this every week because we believe that every survivor deserves to have their voice heard. And if you know someone who might need to hear this message, please share this video with them. You never know whose life you might help save. Thank you for listening. Thank you for caring. And remember, no matter what you're going through, you are strong enough to get through it. You just have to take that first step.